Welcome back again. Every day we're glad to welcome you back, but sad that you have to come back to find out what's going on and sometimes the issues behind the scenes as we chronicle, count down, make known the dark deeds of the Biden regime as they are on their way to extinction. I'm telling you, that's the day we're going to celebrate when we no longer have to say the term Biden. Except, bye-bye, Biden. Anyway, because he is what? He is the thief in chief, yeah. The thief in chief, yeah. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. At least that's the plan. All right, if you'd like to, we're on Rumble. I don't have a little slide for Rumble, I'm sorry. DANWT on Rumble. Danny Thompson is the channel on YouTube, where you can always find our videos as we always point out the poster child of the Biden regime. Maybe the only fun thing of the day, I don't know. Not looking too fondly on this episode. It's going to be depressing.
Sometimes it's hard to live alone, 'cause after all, he's just a man. Stand by your man.
Yeah. After all, he is just a man. Yeah. Yep. Texas, not to be outdone by other states, limiting what you can do with your kid, telling you how to parent, because no legislature has ever told anybody how to parent. A shot of the lovely Texas Dome. If you've ever wanted to see a state capitol, you want to see the state capitol of Texas. Lovely place. Texas bill could send parents to prison for providing gender-affirming care. The measure would redefine child abuse to include parents who consent to hormone therapy and puberty blockers for their transgender children. Well, what else do you do? I don't know. Now, this comes under the category of, first of all, this is a child who has been allowed to be conditioned by his parents. Oh, it gets tiring. His parents. And his parents made the decision. And he is also an actor. But how long are we going to let children decide public policy? Greta Thunberg or Thornburg, whatever her name is, comes to mind, gets to decide climate policy for the whole world, the whole earth. A child. And I realize the Bible says a little child shall lead them, but that's to God. Not to making policy decisions for states and countries and cities. Now I do realize, I told my wife this story, a little 6-year-old girl wrote a note to Old Navy and said she would like her little girl jeans to have real pockets in them, because she would like to put things in her pockets, or maybe just put her hands in her pockets. And Old Navy said, hey, we're going to start putting real pockets on girls' jeans. See, that's okay. Old Navy's not a country. Old Navy's not a state. They can do that because why don't little girls' jeans have pockets in them? Maybe that's why a lot of little girls want to be little boys, because their jeans don't have pockets in them. Maybe so, maybe no. Maybe I go too far. But this little girl who testified before the Texas State Legislature, little boy, again, needs to be corrected in many ways. Anyway, looks like a little girl at first, and anyway, it's hard to tell with 10-year-olds. 10-year-old trans girls schools Texas lawmakers over anti-trans bill. Why would you let him? A young trans actor and activist schooled legislators in Texas about the dangers of legislation under consideration that would criminalize medical care for trans youth. Yep. Why? 10-year-old Kai Shapley told Texas lawmakers bullying is bad and asked them to please stop using transphobic bills to pander for votes from a hateful right-wing base. You know, when my grandchildren talk to grown-ups like that, they would get punished. But no, this child has been schooled. It's not his fault. He's been allowed to be like this. I do not like spending my free time asking adults to make good choices, Shapley told Lone Star lawmakers. I've been having to explain myself since I was 3 or 4 years old. Texas legislators have been attacking me since pre-K. I am in 4th grade now, and that's all you want to hear from that. I mean, really? This little boy knew at 3 years old he was a girl without adult help? Pre-K, he knows he's been attacked by legislators? I mean, and everybody's supposed to buy that. See, they put him out there, and it's like, oh, we feel so sorry for him, dressed like a little girl and everything. They're hurting his feelings. No, his parents hurt his feelings when they didn't say, no, you're a boy. If you want to play with dolls as a boy, that's okay. If you want to do whatever as a boy, that's okay, but you are a boy. And you don't talk to adults like that. You see, that's what's wrong. There's so much wrong on so many levels. And this is why we point this person out all the time. It's not cute. It's not sweet. This isn't just a little boy wearing a dress. You've got a 10-year-old talking about puberty blockers who couldn't even understand puberty. Yeah, I get excited because this is what these people, and it's not because there's a lot of trans people, they're not pushing it on everybody. That's just what they want to do. Okay, do it. Where in the country do they say don't do it? But don't push it and don't let it happen to kids. You can say, no, they have rights. Children don't have rights. Not like that. But this is what Secular Dems of America want, seculardems.org. We went over it yesterday again because it's so very important. I mean, the dark winter of Biden and Harris and Pelosi and Schumer and all the people behind the scenes, it's just horrible. And it's never ending until they're out of there. Now, we've got more coming that'll just make you so happy. Pollsters say they undercounted Republicans, meaning Trump supporters, in 2020. Really? There's also a report from somebody who did an undercover job on like an assistant director of CNN, and that person talked freely about how they just basically reported to get Trump out of office. And they made Biden look good, all that, and we knew all that. It's just interesting. They're all coming forward and admitting it. I wonder why. You know why I think it is? I think because there's some things underneath the surface they're starting to try to, I don't know. And maybe people just want credit. We put him in. We duped the American people. Yeah, pollsters knew they were undercounting Republicans. But why now? We'll find out, I guess. House Democratic margin shrinks to 2 votes with swearing in of Republican Julia Letlow from Louisiana. Took her husband's seat. Not mean he died. So, she got voted in his place. And so, interesting things. There's a lot of people, whether you believe in prayer or not, a lot of people praying for a lot of things before the election. And just because it's not happening, just didn't happen when you thought it would, doesn't mean it's not going to. Wouldn't that just be a day when if the Republicans all of a sudden they got the majority? I don't know. Might have to be a national holiday. And not that I'm that Republican crazy. Understand me. It's just the Democrats are evil. Republicans aren't always great, and they're often stupid, and they do things that you just want to go up and say, really? But as a rule, their policies aren't evil. Well, Johnny, we hope you get better, and this news will thrill you. A single Pfizer or AstraZeneca dose produces strong antibody response. Scientists say AstraZeneca vaccine has greater effect when it comes to cellular response, even though countries are banning it. Denmark, I think, is the first one to ban it because it tends to cause blood clots in a small minority of people. But, also Pfizer, of course, in people 80 above, it's like you really only need one dose. Why are they saying that now, though? Well, because of this Johnson & Johnson problem. One of the women that the usage of the vaccine was paused over died last night, I think. White House says pause on Johnson & Johnson vaccine will not have a significant impact on our vaccination plan. Well, they say they have enough doses, but there is a problem behind all of that because bad news about people having blood clots and dying over vaccinations tends to cause what? People really don't want the vaccine. The White House said Tuesday that the recommended pause in the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine would not have a significant impact on our vaccination plan to administer 200 million shots by the end of April, even as new questions mount about how the move could affect the willingness of Americans to receive shots. Yeah, it's not about the doses. It's about what could happen to me if I did this. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. Now there's some things I really didn't know where to put them. I put them here. And I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just pointing out some differences here. All right? The officer won't face charges in fatal shooting of Capitol rioter. You remember there was one rioter shot, and she was where she, I guess, shouldn't have been, forced her way in, but she was shot and killed. No one has ever understood why. She was unarmed. At first they tried to say she was armed. The officer was in fear of his life or her life, because we don't know anything about the officer. But I'm only doing this to point out some obvious differences here, because everybody talks about, and again, if a police officer kills somebody, hopefully it's really in the line of duty. Police officers are human too. They make mistakes. They get excited. Things going on. Lawbreakers, it's kind of like, if you're purposefully breaking the law, you're kind of putting yourself out there. If you try to escape, you're putting yourself out there. If you resist arrest, you're kind of putting yourself out there. And I know that's old school. That's not the way we look at it anymore. Now we got people calling for an end to policing. Well, I'm moving to Mexico, ladies and gentlemen. Their policing may not be great, but it'd be better than no policing. I mean, no guns, no policing? You really think, are people that stupid? Anyway, a U.S. Capitol Police officer has been cleared of criminal wrongdoing for fatally shooting an Air Force veteran, Ashley Babbitt, as she attempted to breach a set of doors deep in the Capitol during the January siege. January siege. Oh, good grief. Federal prosecutors in D.C. announced Wednesday. Yeah, so authorities determined that there was insufficient evidence to prove Babbitt's civil rights were violated, and then it was reasonable for the officer to believe he was firing in self-defense or in defense of members of Congress and aides who were fleeing the House chamber. Prosecutors did not identify the officer. Now, again, I'm not saying he should have. But notice the difference here. Just notice the difference. And today is one of my days just to ask why. Why? If there's nothing politically behind any of this, why are there always differences? And yet we're made to think that the differences affect us in the other way. Officer charged with second-degree manslaughter in Dante Wright killing. And I'm not saying she shouldn't be. I'm not in it. But notice there's her picture. There's his picture with his little child. They don't tell you that the warrant that he was trying to be arrested for was for armed robbery and assault. They always, it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying they leave that out. And they have 3 reporters on this. All right, let's go to the next side. 3 reporters on this story. But nobody can find out the name of the officer in the Capitol. Interesting. A police officer who authorities say shot and killed a black man in a Minneapolis suburb after a traffic stop has been arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter in the case, authorities said Wednesday. Brooklyn Center police officer Kim Potter is charged in Sunday's shooting death of 20-year-old Dante Wright, Washington County Attorney Pete Orput said. All right, so we know her name. We know her charges. We see her picture. I'm sure you could find where she lives. Hopefully, she was arrested, so if she's gotten out on bail, hopefully she's moved to a secure location. The police chief resigned. We know all of this, except again, just shot and killed him at a traffic stop. Not the whole truth. And I don't, I wasn't there, but based on the information that I have, I think shooting someone is probably, a little over the top on many things. But I'm not the police officer. I'm not there, and I'm not really debating any of that. I just want to know, how come we don't have the picture and the name of the Capitol police officer? Why? Oh, because that's different. That's different. That was against people laying siege to the Capitol. I don't know, just questions I have today. Questions I have. Maybe you don't have the questions. Maybe you understand it all. Maybe you're like me, and on a chilly, damp spring day, you'd rather be here. Yes, the Destin, Florida live beach cam makes me homesick. Yes, I'm from Texas, but I know Florida is my real home now. I feel it. Yeah, I'd like to be there laying on the warm sands, forgetting that all of this horror exists, but ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't go away. In fact, every day it increases. And we try to have moments of levity, but it's hard to do some days. We're going to announce shortly, it's already been announced, that even though President Trump had it set for May 1st, now we will have all of our troops out of Afghanistan by September 11th. Ring any bells? Why would that day be picked when we could already be out? Yeah. Oh, you people who think, it's political. Yeah, they're trying to do a little end-run celebration here. Oh, come on. Nobody would think that. Of course, the big fear, terrible days ahead for Afghan women, fear the return of the Taliban. There's no sense fearing it. It's going to happen. You're women, but, should the United States be there for all that time? We should have never went into Afghanistan, blown up all those that were trying to threaten us, made sure they never did it again, and go back in when necessary. We should have never been there. We've been there 20 years. We were already settled to get out. You would think, by the way they carried on, you would think Biden is the one that decided to do this. No, he's just deciding if he's going to do what was already planned. But Gonna have a little bit of Biden here, so let's do this.
Come ride the little train that is rolling down the tracks to the junction. Forget about your cares, it is time to relax at the junction. Lots of curves, you bet, and even more when you get to the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
There's a little hotel called the Shady Rest at the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
It is run by Kate, come and be her guest at the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
And that's Uncle Joe, he's a moving kind of slow at the junction. Petticoat Junction.
Uncle Joe time. He did give a short speech today on explaining why he felt we should leave Afghanistan later than what President Trump had set forth. There were many questions about it in the daily press briefing. We'll have one for you because now reporters are very concerned that we're there. That we're leaving because it's not going to be safe, this and that. Again, we should have never had a permanent footprint there in Afghanistan. We've wasted a lot of lives, a lot of money, etc. So I'm not against that. I think we should have already been out. Of course, Biden talks like he wasn't part of the Obama regime administration that kept us in there for 8 years. He always neglected, there was nothing we could do then. And he doesn't really blame Trump, but he kind of makes it sound like he's done all the deciding. But we are leaving Afghanistan, and I would show you clips from his remarks, but I'm telling you, the man started out strong, and if he had gotten any slower toward the end of his very short, it wasn't like an hour-long thing. And barely, if you saw him walk off, you talking about looking like an old man when he was walking off. Go and it's on, the video's up. You can watch it. You want to go in and wind him up a little bit. Moving slow. Literally, I've seen turtles move faster. This is just... Anyway, he could barely get through, and there's so many things we could show you, tell you. Oh, but time. Biden announces withdrawal of all U.S. troops from Afghanistan by 9/11. Starting on May 1st, the date that we were already supposed to be out by. And again, go watch this. Just watch the speech. Let me know if I'm wrong. You ever seen anybody slow down that much? I've got a granddaughter that, when she's ready to go to sleep, she's ready to go to sleep. She can be full speed and all of a sudden she's just gone. She's out. She'll just, Biden, it's like, good grief, somebody go pop a pill in his mouth or something. And they didn't have Harris there, so he was on his own. That was scary. I've got something in our inside segment. If I can get this slide to move, there we go. All right, Jen. Oh, you're not going to help me. All right. Sorry, my screen is moving slow today.
Republican senators have criticized attaching the withdrawal of troops in Afghanistan to September 11th. They say it's politically driven. Do you have a response to that? And also, do you have anything to share on who came up with that deadline and why?
I think it was the president wanting to send a clear message that this is not going to be an open-ended timeline to withdrawing troops. We have had that policy for some time in the past, and he disagrees with it. So he was giving a timeline on when operationally we could move troops out. We also are going to do that in close coordination with our NATO partners and other countries in the region. If it's ahead of that timeline, then that's a positive step. But we wanted to give the military and our diplomatic partners on the ground plenty of time.
So did he choose 9/11 as the final date?
I think I just explained why he chose that timeline.
Thanks. And
As usual, she didn't explain why he chose that timeline. She just explaining, we wanted a firm date to be out by so it wouldn't be open-ended. they chose the timeline so they can have the 20-year celebration or whatever it is. 20-year celebration, and finally we're through and I did it. Well, Mr. Biden, if you can still walk up to the podium by then, God bless you. I don't think you'll be able to. I mean, they're killing him. I mean, and he asked for it. But we have some interesting insight, and this is an opinion piece, but it isn't from the Washington Post. Biden is making the Trump presidency seem like a golden age of unity. Yeah. Same that Obama did. Says they're going to negotiate, and says we tried talking to them, but they wouldn't. They were making these demands and this. And see, negotiations with Obama was this: we're going to bring you in to talk, and then you sign on to what we're doing and be a part of it, or we're going to tell everybody that you were just being too hard to deal with. See, it's very much one-sided, and Biden's doing the same thing. But, the big difference is he said he was going to break through that. President Biden promised to, and this is by Mark A. Thiessen, kind of getting philosophical today and yesterday, looking into some things. But let's look. They can just keep giving you headlines, but let's see how things are really working. Because the media's, the mainstream media isn't going to tell you that on CNN highlights and even Fox News. President Biden promised to usher in a golden age of bipartisan cooperation, but instead he is showing a reverse Midas touch, taking issues that once united Republicans and Democrats and making them partisan and divisive, or divisive, depending on which side of the dictionary you woke up on. All right. Until Biden came along, every single COVID-19 relief bill was approved with overwhelming bipartisan support in both houses. Very true. Congress passed 3 COVID relief packages in March 2020 with margins of 96-1, 90-8, and 96-0 in the Senate, and with overwhelming bipartisan support in the House. And the House was Democratic, so if they, you had to have bipartisan support. This was followed in April by the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act, which passed 388-5 in the House and by unanimous consent in the Senate. Indeed, the votes were so bipartisan that Democrats blocked another COVID relief package until after Election Day because they did not want to let President Donald Trump claim credit for another bipartisan victory before voters went to the polls. But after he lost and they finally allowed another COVID bill to come up for the vote in December, it passed. It was always gonna pass. Passed both houses. Wait a minute, let's see, that's not it. It passed both houses of Congress with similar margins. So, just really good margins of victory there. For Biden, who promised to put his whole soul, and there's a comment there to be made over whether he even has a soul, but I'm going to bypass it and just stick to this thought-provoking piece. And if he does have, obviously he has a soul, it's just very, very black. Into uniting Republicans and Democrats passing a bipartisan COVID bill should have been a layup. Trump did it 5 times. Good line there. But instead, the president has turned unity into division by using COVID relief as a pretext to pass all sorts of liberal spending projects that have nothing to do with the pandemic. He did so even after 10 Republican senators, led by Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, came to the White House and offered him a path to a filibuster-proof bipartisan majority. He could have had it. Not only did the president reject their offer, last week he actually tried to blame the senators, saying they didn't move an inch from their initial proposal of $619 billion. That's a lie. the senators responded, Biden never gave negotiation a chance. And that's true, and we know it, and, again, if you have any complaints about Susan Collins, it's that she doesn't always think over issues very well, and she can be kind of a closet liberal. But I've never heard anybody call that woman a liar. And she did not go into that negotiation to not negotiate. That's a lie, the senators responded. Biden never gave negotiation a chance. Fewer than 24 hours after our meeting in the Oval Office, the Senate Democratic leader began the process of triggering reconciliation, which precluded Republican participation. All 10 Republicans explained in a statement, adding that the White House roundly dismissed our effort in order to justify its go-it-alone strategy. And, these are all the more liberal-leaning Republican senators. So why would they lie? They only lie about things Trump would do. Now Biden is trying to do the same thing when it comes to infrastructure. There has long been strong support among Republican leaders for an infrastructure package of as much as $1 trillion. But instead of uniting Republicans and Democrats around a bipartisan bill, Trump wanted to do at least that much. He wanted a big infrastructure package that would actually just deal with infrastructure, and a very small part of Biden's American Jobs Plan actually deals with true infrastructure. Biden is using infrastructure as a pretext to spend more tax dollars on things that have nothing to do with infrastructure, even though they keep saying it does. A Politico analysis of his $2.25 trillion, actually $3 trillion, proposal found that only $821 billion, or 37%, is focused on traditional infrastructure items such as transportation, electricity, and internet. And, you can make your arguments on whatever. Add another $111 billion for clean drinking water, and that comes to $932 billion. Almost precisely the amount Republican leaders are on record supporting. Biden could easily win enough GOP support for an infrastructure package of this magnitude and pass it by bipartisan filibuster-proof majority. Instead, he has loaded up his bill with another $1.32 trillion in spending that has little or no relation to infrastructure. For example, his proposal includes $400 billion to support expanded home care for seniors. This might be a worthy social program, but what does it have to do with infrastructure? I don't know. On Fox News Sunday, Biden's National Economic Council Director, Brian Deese, justified it as the infrastructure of care. The infrastructure of care, which is ridiculous. Well, they're doing it because they're lower wage workers, employees, lower skilled, and as they say, mostly people and women of color. And they want their votes. It's pretty simple. He's not alone. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat of New York, recently tweeted, "Paid leave is infrastructure. Child care is infrastructure. Caregiving is infrastructure." All right, well, this is Orwellian. They're changing the meaning. They're changing the meaning of it, and everybody's letting them. If Republicans had tried to tack on a $400 billion boost in defense spending as part of an infrastructure package that claimed that defense is infrastructure, Democrats would have howled. But Biden does not seem to care. Just like his COVID package, he is trying to ram his infrastructure plan through Congress using the budget reconciliation process. And what that is, they can say, oh, it's part of the budget that can be passed, just by an up or down vote. And if we say it's part of that, then we don't have to have a filibuster-proof majority. We just need a simple majority in both houses. And supposedly you could only do one of those a year. We've already done it. But somehow the parliamentarian for the Senate decided, you know what? As long as you can get this done before the end of the fiscal year so it can still be seen as part of 2021 budget, then it's okay. But you've got to get it done by then. Yep. Using the budget reconciliation process, which requires no Republican votes. The only obstacles he faces are within the Democratic caucus, from moderates who oppose the tax increases he has proposed and progressives who think he does not spend enough. How does Biden justify the hyper-partisan start to this presidency, to his presidency? Just as Democrats redefined infrastructure, the president is now trying to redefine bipartisanship, which, we saw that way back when the reporter said, isn't it really bipartisan, if you don't count Congress, because most people want the $1,400? And I told you, they're going to come back and start using that. And the next day, Jen Psaki came in, announced it like it was her idea. And I think it was a cooperation thing. Get it out there and then start using it. Yeah. Biden recently declared, I would like elected Republican support, but what I know I have now is that I have electoral support from Republican voters. Well, there's a new poll today that says no, most Republican voters strongly oppose him. First, that is flat untrue. In a recent Gallup poll, just 8% of Republicans approved of Biden's job performances. Second, that is not what Biden promised. He pledged to work across the aisle to reach consensus. Instead, he's making the Trump presidency seem like the golden age of unity by comparison. So thank you, Mark, for that, to show you exactly how this is working. I keep saying it, but maybe it helps, and maybe, you could call the White House and say, we'd like some true unity, so some bipartisan votes. We're not buying it, but no, that might be enough. All right, small border news.
Make a run for the border.
In Golden Triangle news, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Vice President Harris has announced, her office has announced, she will be visiting Mexico and possibly Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador. I think Honduras, but not the border. Go down there and talk about how much money we can send them to stop this. But we have this. Remember, we showed you yesterday, the day before, whenever it was, of the facility setting basically empty because it's for profit that we've already paid for, while we're putting illegals into hotels, motels, hotels, wherever, spending over $87 million for that. And that was a non-bid contract just awarded to this group for whatever reason. Well, and see, this is how scandals really start, but you don't really call them scandals, which is how come Obama say I had a scandal, 0 scandals in my presidency. No, he just never would go along with it. Neither would the press. Texas nonprofit lands huge contract after hiring former Biden official. I mean, and we're talking huge. This is not a small thing. Family Endeavors, a nonprofit in Texas, won a contract up to $530 million to help the Biden administration during the crisis unfolding along the southern border, according to a report. The March contract was by far the largest ever for the nonprofit and came months after the company hired Andrew Lorenzen-Strait, is that how you say it? Yeah. Who served as an advisor to the Biden-Harris transition team. The nonprofit told Axios that its work on the border was a continuation of services it has conducted for the migrant population since 2012, but never had a big old contract like that. Of course, it's nonprofit. That doesn't mean nobody makes any money or has big salaries. The contract is intended to provide emergency intake and wraparound care at a temporary migrant facility in Texas, like the one that's sitting empty, Axios report said. The nonprofit's website says Lorenzo Strait leads a nationwide team of dedicated professionals in providing critical social services to migrants, including unaccompanied children and families. A statement from the nonprofit in January said Lorenzo Strait was tapped to be its senior director for migrant services and federal affairs. The nonprofit did not immediately respond to an after-hours email from Fox News seeking comment. The Biden administration has blamed the surge in part on the Trump administration's dismantling of legal pathways to asylum, while also downplaying it as only a challenge. Yeah. Republicans have blamed the numbers on the Biden administration's policies, such as decision to roll back, etc., etc. The Administration for Children and Families, a division of the Department of Health and Human Services, has already paid $255 million of the no-bid contract, that's the part I was getting to the nonprofit. So since March, this group has received $255 million and they're not through paying yet. No bid. They just said, hey, how much? I'd like to know how much Lorenzo Strait is making. The agency did not respond to an email from Fox News, but the single contract reportedly dwarfed the nonprofit's total $43 million budget in 2018. You know, something's wrong here, ladies and gentlemen. Something's very, very wrong. Why are they paying the $87 million to hotels and then doing this? And then we have facility 6 changes of clothes, snacks in the refrigerator, private rooms, TV, grounds, soccer fields, medical scanning, screenings, care, classrooms. It's sitting basically empty. Because they're for profit? No, there's nobody from the Biden regime that can make any money on it. Yeah, you can say that's a strong charge. It is, it's the truth. These people are evil. They don't care. They're just always about making money. And then Trump, anybody related to him made a dime, and everybody, is loving all the articles saying how much money he lost while he was president. We have this, and how much time do we have? We don't even have enough time to get into this, but it's just really, and you knew it was coming.
But back to Title 10, if I may. So today, as you well know, the Biden administration and HHS started the reversal of the Trump administration's ban on abortion referrals at Title 10 family planning clinics. So my first question, why does the Biden administration insist that pro-life Americans pay for abortions and violate their conscience?
Well, first, that's not an accurate depiction of what happens. So and I know we want to be accurate around here. None of the funds appropriated under this title shall be used in programs where abortion is a method of family planning. That is written into the Public Health Service Act, and it specifically states that.
But we know there's indirect subsidies, money that's fungible, that can't be traced. We know that. Come on.
That is not how it works. That is the law. So I'm stating what the law is and how it is implemented legally by these organizations. And the reason since you gave me the opportunity, the reason why the president took these steps is because he believes that advancing equity for all, including people of color and others who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality, can be helped by these actions. And by focusing on advancing equity in the Title 10 program, we can create opportunities for the improvement of communities that have been historically underserved, which benefits everyone. That's how these fundings are used in communities.
You talk about equity, if I may interrupt. Mm-hmm. How is it equity? How is it fighting systemic racism when abortion, we well know, disproportionately affects minority children? Again,
funding cannot be used from this for abortion, but access to health care, Access to healthcare in communities that have been marginalized, underserved, adversely affected by persistent poverty is always going to be something the president fights for. Okay, I think I've answered your question. Alex, go ahead.
I love that guy. He's one of the few good reporters there. Catholic News. Yeah. God bless him. God bless him. And you know, for Jen, we've just got to do it. This is all about abortion. It's not about health care. Now, we do have, and it's a little long, a report from when President Trump cut off funding and said you cannot, if you are receiving Title X funding, which helps with family planning, that's what it's about, pregnancy, you can get pregnancy tested, get birth control, etc., etc. But you cannot refer, and you can't do abortions with the money, but you cannot even refer people to abortions. So Planned Parenthood said, we're out of it. And this is a report from CBS News back at that time. And I think you will find, while she's talking about healthcare, it's all about abortion. That's all this is about, is abortion. It's not about healthcare.
Planned Parenthood is giving up tens of millions of dollars in federal funding following the implementation of new Title X rules. The nonprofit organization called the new policy unethical and dangerous, adding that more than 1 million of its patients will be put at risk. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jen Crawford has the latest from Washington.
Well, Planned Parenthood says that this new rule means that some low-income women who go to their clinics for birth control or other family planning services wouldn't be able to get the discounted rates or would have to go try to find them at other clinics elsewhere. In total, they're turning down about $60 million a year.
We refuse to engage with an administration that is going to force us not to deliver the best possible care to our patients.
Planned Parenthood acting president and CEO Alexis McGill Johnson says her organization was forced out of the Title X funding by the Trump administration. Title X subsidizes family planning services for some 4 million women nationwide. Planned Parenthood says it has served about 40% of those patients that it says might now have to seek care elsewhere. The president has championed the rule for months with religious conservatives who have pushed for it.
We've issued a final rule to prohibit Title X taxpayer funding from subsidizing the abortion industry.
The impact will mean that people may choose to forego care. They may choose to delay their care until this is resolved, and that's what's unacceptable.
By law, the federal money could never be used to perform abortions. But under the new rule, clinics that receive money under Title X programs can no longer refer patients for abortions. The rule is almost identical to one issued by the Reagan administration and upheld in 1991 by the Supreme Court, but was reversed by President Bill Clinton in 1993.
Well, the reality is Planned Parenthood for years has been abusing Title X as a marketing slush fund. Women come into Planned Parenthood for birth control services, and then they're sold their abortion services.
Kristen Hawkins is president of Students for Life and advocated for the new Title X rule.
Women are still going to receive the same amount of access and care. They're just not going to be able to go to a Planned Parenthood, and they're not going to be receiving Title X funds for that.
Now, a federal appeals court in San Francisco is considering whether or not to overturn this new rule, and Planned Parenthood also is taking the fight to Congress and try to get legislation that would protect this funding. Meanwhile, the Trump administration says there are other organizations that can provide these services for low-income women.
CBS News reporter Kate Smith is here. She has been covering this story extensively. Kate, thank you for being here. How could this decision impact the patients?
That's a great question. And what we're hearing from Planned Parenthood is this could impact patients in two ways. By increased wait times, because they're operating on a smaller budget, so it would take, it would be harder to fulfill those, those appointments. And then second, the services that they're coming in for, and, really specific services, so say a pack of birth control pills or an IUD, those things would become more expensive for patients because they're no longer being subsidized by those Title X funds. So we're seeing it in two different ways, a delay of services and then an increase of costs.
How does this change then affect the way that Planned Parenthood operates?
That's another great question. It's one that we haven't had a lot of clarity on. So the way Title X works is that individual grants are rewarded to organizations like Planned Parenthood and many others as well. And they're for very specific projects. So for example, Planned Parenthood has one project where they have a mobile medical unit in Cleveland. And they go around to homeless areas and they help women with pregnancy tests, birth control, IUDs, things like that. Now that was a very specific Title X grant. So now that they're not able to use those funds, they're no longer able to do that specific program. So what you're going to see are programs like that having to sunset because of course the money has run out. Unfortunately, Planned Parenthood hasn't given us a clear idea of how much money is at stake. We've heard it's around the ballpark of 60 million, but Planned Parenthood won't confirm that. They're really trying to focus this all on the programming that will have to be shut down.
That's interesting for you to say. So 60 million is the amount that they would be foregoing, or altogether their operating costs?
No, that would be the money that they're foregoing because they are no longer choosing to participate in the Title X program.
Okay, so they will still be able to have operations that are underway, but how could this impact the discounted drug plan?
So that's another great question. So we spoke to some people within the federal government yesterday, and their understanding is that it might actually impact, because they're no longer in Title X, it could impact their ability to get discounted drugs, which was a federal program that you could have access through Title X. So birth control, IUDs, these are medicines that are actually very, very expensive, especially if you're uninsured women. And so this program, the idea was that not only can you get a grant from the federal government through Title X, you're also granted access through discounted drugs. And so the idea is we have to confirm this, but we believe that if you're not part of Title X, you will no longer have access to subsidized birth control options as well. So it's kind of a double hit if you'll think about it that way.
And I think it's interesting to note too that Planned Parenthood actually refused the funding. It wasn't that the federal government wasn't going to be giving them the funds. Explain the restrictions in abortions and even the doctor-patient privilege that they felt was restricted in order for them to make this decision.
That's an important point to make here. Planned Parenthood has been saying that they have been forced out of the program, but the reality is that they have chosen not to participate in the program any longer. And again, in Crawford's piece, the way she says it, it's because they believe that the new rules are unethical. So what happens under Title X, these new rules, are that doctors within Planned Parenthood are no longer allowed to refer patients to abortion. So imagine it this pragmatically. So you're a woman, you walk into Planned Parenthood, you think you might be pregnant, but you also want to get birth control option. Many, many women who go into Planned Parenthood will also receive some sort of birth control at the time of their abortion appointment. So you go in, you find out you're pregnant. Under Title X, you would no longer allowed to refer a patient to abortion. So if you are a woman coming into a Planned Parenthood, that doctor would not be allowed to tell you that Planned Parenthood can do an abortion, go to the front desk, and we can schedule that if that is your choice. And that is what Planned Parenthood is objected to. They are saying that if a woman is coming to our clinic, we want to give them the full spectrum of the options that they have. And right now, abortion is legal, and that is an option that women have. And if we're not allowed to say that, we're not allowed to help women with one of the options through a pregnancy, we can't, in good faith, accept these funds any longer.
These changes may actually be temporary. I think it's also important to note that there's some lawsuits going on. So explain how that could all unfold in the courts.
That's right. So there are two different ways that these Title X rules may not actually be the permanent change to Title X funding. There are two ways that could happen. One is through the courts, like you mentioned. So Planned Parenthood has obviously sued over these rule changes. And in certain, federal district courts, judges have agreed with Planned Parenthood. They've said, this is illegal. It would, be in violation of George H.W. Bush's, reversal of the Reagan rule, back in the 80s. And so they have sided with Planned Parenthood. However, they have not given them a preliminary injunction. So they're saying we're going to hear the case, but in the interim, we have to abide by the rules for now. So that is one way. So if a court ultimately sides with Planned Parenthood on this, then that is one way that these Title X rules could be reversed. Another way is actually through Congress. So right now, House Democrats have put forward a spending bill that effectively would reverse all these rule changes for Title X. It passed the House. It's now in the Senate. So Planned Parenthood is really looking to, Senate Democrats and, Republicans who are, in favor of Planned Parenthood and abortion rights to pass this spending bill that would effectively reverse all of these changes that you're seeing to Title X and, what we're talking about, this, so-called gag rule.
We're running out of time, but I think it's really important to know for people that are in a low-income situation, where can they go now to get medical attention?
So you still can go to Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
We're not going to see these changes happening immediately. They're tapping into emergency funds. They're tapping into individual, philanthropists to try to make up that budget shortfall. But the other thing to note is that Planned Parenthood only makes up 40% of Title X recipients. There are plenty of other, services and organizations that are still receiving these funds and they are abiding by these rules. So while your experience at these organizations may be different because they are abiding by the rules, you still would be able to get birth control at a subsidized rate there.
Great. Kate Smith, thank you so much for your insight.
Sometimes it was hard to tell if Kate Smith actually went to a college and learned how to speak proper English. Other times it was hard to tell if she was a CBS reporter or actually worked for Planned Parenthood. But nevertheless, it explained the situation. Why did Planned Parenthood pull out? Why do we need this rule in Title X? So they can do abortions. So they can say, hey, go sign up for an abortion. And we'll get on it right now. And so we've just moved you over to our real moneymaker. Why did Planned Parenthood pull out? They couldn't do abortions. Had nothing to do with care. See, this never has anything to do with care. They lie. Jen lies and says that it's about providing quality care for low-income people. It's not. It's about doing abortions. I do not understand. I do not. And I don't have time to get into it today. Maybe we'll finish it tomorrow. Biden administration moves to reverse Trump-era abortion rules for Title X. And it has to be X or it's another Title X. I do not understand why liberals love abortion so much. I do and I don't. It's just, we can go to things on Margaret Sanger and maybe we'll just do it all tomorrow. Margaret Sanger, the only real racist that nobody's saying, oh no, we can't talk about her anymore. Anyway, I've got to move on. I told you it's depressing, and we knew this would happen. Another way that you can roll back Trump's restrictions is for, so-called Christians to vote for Biden. Yeah. People say, oh, so there's more issues than life. Is there? Is there? We say all the time, if my people who are called by my name, we use that verse all the time. 2 Chronicles 7, 14? And they repent of their evil ways. And then we say, oh, it's okay because there's more to it than abortion. Well, how's God going to heal our land if you're voting in people that keep pushing abortion? And there's several corporate people from Planned Parenthood in the Biden regime. Yeah, it makes me angry. I hate that. And I realize there's women, they don't know what to do. I'm not. There's people, they're in terrible circumstances, but there's other alternatives. Talk about sending money down to Central America to keep them there in their country. Why can't we, fund some money? Say, we'll help you. Well, they're giving more money, but they still want to do abortions. All right, Godformation time. Russia, China, and Israel have the regime boxed in, and in North Korea, and they are spinning in place. Afraid to do almost anything. They are meeting day and night and trying to come up with answers. The only answers they know is to negotiate, but they have nothing to negotiate. They have nothing to work with. They don't have anything to offer, but they have nothing. Russia knows too much, too many things that the Biden regime does not want revealed. And Russia today, yesterday they announced, we're going to have a summit meeting. Russia today said, we're only going to meet if the U.S. watches itself. Yeah. Iran has I can't read my writing again. Iran has different things that they have over the Biden regime. China owns them and, kind of rules over them. Israel won't play by their rules, and North Korea is, just unpredictable. So this is the way they're viewing everything there. They have an answer given without seeming to do so in each case. They are working out retreats that they can cover up. Their only real strategy otherwise is dependent on Europe. What can Europe force and what can Europe do? And again, we didn't have time today. We keep going over foreign affairs. We need to touch on domestic and there are women that are getting anxious in the regime because they feel they are not being listened to, and they are talking to reporters, but not really getting out yet because reporters still want to cover. Now, 3 scandals are on the horizon. They're threatening. One we just showed you. And I just, I get this information the night before, and then the next day it's there. And it's really, one's money. And we're already seeing payoffs of people. Sexual harassment claims sexual harassment claims coming out of the regime. One against Harris. Yeah, one against Harris. Can I say that again? One against Harris. Inappropriate stock trading by some cabinet members. Insider trading. A border memo that could bring serious upheaval, and that is why Ruth Jacobson is go ahead and retiring, is leaving, and a memo that was leaked that revealed the true plans to overrun the country. A memo that called the miners a problem, but a necessary tool, that they were a beneficial sacrifice for their cause, not the miners' cause, but for the regime's cause. The memo is sitting on an editor's desk right now, and he's waiting for a trade-off with the regime if he'll publish it or not, or she'll publish it or not. So, there's also an unflattering picture of Biden at large, one of him being led like a child in one of his bad moments, they're doing all they can to try to recover, and because they don't want people to see him like that, pray that it gets sent out. Somebody's going to publish it. At some point, these people are going to start publishing because they're in the business of making money, and they don't like Biden. The press is starting not to like Biden because he's not really doing what they thought he would do. So anyway, boy, that's the show. I know it's another one of those shows where you're leaving kind of, wow. What you do, pray for the country. Pray for the country. God bless America. Pray for the country. Pray that these scandals will be revealed. Things will come out. Pray that this regime will end quickly. Pray one for another. And thank God still you're in the USA. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.